Welcome back. So, just before going for the break, we were discussing the characteristics of forecasting, and three major characteristics we discussed. Just to recap, one is forecasting will always include expected, and there may be some error. So, since it is a prediction, it will not be accurate all the time. Forecasting is much easier for a shorter period of time compared to a longer period of time, and forecasting is more accurate when we aggregate rather than disaggregated forecast. Let us go and see our presentation. Now, what are the factors that influence or that decide prediction or forecasting for a particular product? It is the base demand, currently what the company's performance is, how much is the company producing, or what is the current or demand currently or in the recent past. State of the economy, very important. State of the economy definitely decides the consumption power of the customers. There are seasonal components. There are certain products where demand goes up at a particular season and the demand goes down in the other season. So, these are seasonal products. Competitor actions, I would like to go to the slide. Competitor actions. So, if I am producing a particular product and if my competitor is not doing well, then quite obviously my demand for my product will go up, and vice versa. Whereas, if the competitors are doing well, then there is every possibility that the demand of my product may go down. Trend components. Now, what is trend? Trend is a particular pattern, whether the demand for a particular product is going up or down, whether the trend is positive or negative will also influence the prediction or forecasting of my particular product. Price discounts, if the company allows price discounts, then I would be in a better position to sell my product more. That means the demand of my product will obviously go up. So, this is inversely directly proportional. Okay. So, better the price, better is the demand. Cyclic components, there are products which goes through a cycle. It has a demand, then it goes, then the demand falls, and again the demand rises. So, it goes through a cyclical process. There are promotional components, the demand of a particular product. We have seen today promotion is something very important, considered very important marketing activity, and we have seen many products, even though their quality may not be as good or almost similar to other products available in the market. It is just because of marketing and promotion that the demands are going high, and there are some irregular components also for which the demand may fluctuate. It may go up either on the positive or the negative. Let us see the slide and read all the factors. Base demand or the past demand, state of the economy, seasonal factors, actions of competitors, the trend, whether price discounts are available or not, cyclic components, promotional components or advertisement components, and irregular components. Let us go to the next slide. Now, here we see what is called dependent and independent forecasting. For that, we would like to go back to the board again. So, we draw the same diagram that we had: car, tire, rubber and chemical. Now, what is dependent forecasting and independent forecasting? Obviously, the word dependent and independent is key over here. When the forecasting of a company is dependent on the other, it is called Now, if you see, this is where these are the companies who are directly involved in the supply chain, direct supply chain. All these are responsible, all these companies are responsible for the final product that is produced. So, if you see, forecasts of the tire company depends upon the car, forecast of the rubber company depends upon the tire, so and the chemical company depends on the rubber. So, they all experience what is called a dependent forecasting, okay, and this is called vertical forecasting, vertical dependent forecasting. Excuse me. Now, what is horizontal forecasting? It could be the marketing process that is involved. What is independent forecasting? Now, the tire is dependent upon the car, rubber is depending upon the tire, and the chemical depends upon, that means the demand of chemical depends upon the rubber. So, now who does car depend upon? It is independent. Yes, he is also dependent on something. Depend on what? On whom? It depends on the customer. It depends on the customer or the consumer, okay. And not only the customer, it is the consumption power of the customer. Now, the customer or consumer, why is it called independent? It is still dependent, but it is independent of the members in the supply chain. It is independent of the members of the supply chain. That means, the raw material service provider and the actual company who is producing the final product. These are not a part of, these entities are not a part of the companies who are making the final product. They are not suppliers, they are not manufacturers, they are not providing raw materials, they are the customers, and they are the, it is the consumption power of the customer on which the car's forecasting will depend upon, the company who is producing the car. If the customer's consumption power is high, if the consumer behavior is positive, is towards this particular brand of car, the forecast or the demand of the car will go up. If the consumption power of customer is not that high, if the country is going through a recession or whatever it is, or the economy is not in a good condition, then the consumption power of customers will not be that high, and that will directly influence the demand of car. So, it is dependent in one way, but independent from the actual supply chain process. So, these are the two broad categories. Go back to the slide, and if you see forecasting categories, dependent and independent forecasting. So, these are the forecasting methods. Qualitative methods, subjective, not based on any data, it depends on judgment and opinion. Time series, they use historical data. Causal, use the relationship between demand and other factors to develop forecast. And simulation, it is immediate consumer choice, combine time series and causal method. Now, when I say qualitative, it does not depend upon any historical data or a particular data. It depends upon how a customer feels, what is the judgment of a customer, what is the opinion of a consumer. My prediction or my forecast of my product will depend upon the opinion of a customer, not based on certain figures. That is judgment, qualitative, not quantitative. Time series is dependent upon static and adaptive. It is basically based on certain historical data. Based on the historical data, the past, I would predict or I would announce my forecasted demand for the future. Causal, very important. I will give you one example of causal relationship. Suppose there is a football match going on. A football match is going on, or IPL cricket is going on in Hyderabad. Okay. Now, there is a vendor who's selling soft drinks, vendor selling soft drinks. Now, there is no relationship. Now, what will his prediction of number of soft drinks being sold is the temperature. Very interesting. Temperature, how hot it is. If the mercury level goes up, it is expected that his sale of soft drinks will go up. These relationships are used also if you see football matches being played in Europe, in countries which is extremely cold, and they have coffee vendors. So, it is said that the number of coffee, cups of coffee being sold, the prediction of the number of coffee that is expected to be sold on a particular day depends upon how cold the temperature is today. So, there is a relationship between two factors which are not related to at all. There is no relationship between coffee and temperature, outside temperature, but in forecasting they have a relationship, and that is how. And simulation, as I said, we are not going to discuss simulation in details, it is based on certain consumer behavior. So, basically four forecasting methods: qualitative, time series, causal and simulation. Now, we will see some approaches. Before that, I would like to draw your attention to some data characteristics. Now, when you talk of forecasting, not quantitative forecasting, not qualitative forecasting, we are using a lot of data to forecast, to predict our sales or demand or whatever it is for future. Now, there are three types of data available. Data has three types of characteristics. One is a pattern, one is noise, and one is called random. Very important. Now, what is pattern? Pattern is very consistent. That means the data do not deviate from each other too much. That means it follows a certain pattern. That means the forecast or the demand, they follow a particular, there is not much of deviation. Noise, there is no pattern, it can go up, it can go down. And random forecasting, random data are something. Now, in noise you can still predict. So, there are three characteristics of data. One is pattern, you can definitely predict because there is not much of a deviation. For instance, if somebody is scoring 80% and if there is a pattern, he would actually score 80, 82, 79, 85, there is not much deviation. Noise, sometimes 80, sometimes 70, sometimes 100, sometimes 60, you can still predict. And random cannot be forecasted. There is no pattern at all, even there is no noise at all. Non-pattern is actually called noise. Noise is the term given to data which does not have any pattern. So, these are the three characteristics of data which are used for forecasting. Okay. I would also like to draw your attention to the forecasting approaches. We will discuss four forecasting approaches. The first one is judgmental. By the word judgmental, you know, we are trying to get opinion from customers through surveys and consensus. We create certain reports based on what the customers feel about a particular product, and based on their opinion I make predictions, I do my forecasting. Then experimental. What is experimental? You have seen number of times when you go to a shopping mall or you on the roadside or anywhere, or when a new model of car or a two-wheeler is launched, the people are given test marketing. That means, suppose somebody is launching a new soft drinks, and if you have gone to a shopping mall, you will find free samples of those soft drinks are given to customers and opinion is taken from them. Same happens with vehicles also. You are given free test driving, and based on your opinion predictions are made. Then we form customer consensus surveys, we form consumer panels. We invite, there are companies who invite experts from the industry, they form a panel and the panel give their opinion about the product. So, there are different forecasting approaches and techniques. Based on what the panel says, I will predict the sale of my product for the future period. Next approach, relational and time series. If you see, the relational has econometer model, input output model, life cycle model and simulation model. Econometric model depends upon the spending power of consumers, interest rate, employment, etc. Now, for instance, there is a relationship between house loan, interest on house loan and purchase of properties. So, if RBI decides to lower or the banks decide to lower the interest rate on house loans, people who are in the business of properties can expect sale of their properties to go up, sale of their apartments, new apartments or the properties to go up. Input output model is interdependent on various branch of the economy. Life cycle model, it depends, my forecast will depend upon how long this particular product will survive in the market. Today, the biggest problem in supply chain management is short life cycle of every product. If you see any product, any brand, the life cycle is not too large. It is changing, the model is changing, the type is changing, because the customer need is changing. So, the relational model depends upon the life cycle. Same with the time series model, it, as I said earlier, time series model depends upon certain historical figures. There are at least 14 models. In relational model, we have four types of relational. In time series, there are 14 models, but in this particular curriculum or course, we are only going to discuss the 4 major models, only 4 of them. You want to learn more, you have to come back to me, or you want to have to study books on supply chain management to understand and study the extended time series models, all 14 of them. But for convenience purpose, we are only going to discuss 4, that is the cumulative mean, simple moving average, weighted moving average and exponential smoothing. I am sure many of the students who are doing MBA from the commerce, they already know these few models, but still as a part of our curriculum, we are going to discuss this time series models. Components of observation: level, trend, seasonality. Like we had data characteristics, there were 3 types of data characteristics, right? One was random, one was noise and other one was pattern. Similarly, observation, it also has 3 kinds of characteristics or components. One is systematic and one is random. We are going to discuss this 3. One is called level, then trend and then seasonality. We observe that forecast, our observations changes. What is level? Level is what is the current demand, present demand, the base demand. Okay. For any product, I am producing and selling this particular product. I am selling 1 lakh such marker pens. I have sold 1 lakh marker pens in the year 2018. So, what is my level? What is my base demand? Is 1 lakh. Trend. Now, there are 2 types of trend. One is linear and one is non-linear. Trend can be both positive and negative. Trend means what is the direction? Is the demand of a product increasing or is it decreasing? So, if it is increasing, it is positive trend. That means the demand is increasing over a period of time. It depends upon whether it is a month or a week or year or whatever it may be. So, it is increasing, and when it is negative, the trend is negative. That means the demand of that particular product is going down, 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 down. Now, what is linear one, what is non-linear? Suppose, just for simplicity's sake, assume the demand of a product is 100. So, period 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For simplicity's sake, we take 5 periods. It could be year, it could be months, does not matter. In the second year, we find that the sale has gone up or the demand has gone up by 10%. So, how much have I sold? 110, 100 plus 10%, 110. In period number 3, it is again gone up by 10%. So, what is 10% of 110? 11. So, how much have I sold? 121. In the fourth period, again it goes up by 10%. So, every period the demand is increasing by 10%. So, it is positive and it is also linear. So, 121 plus 10%, 121 plus 12, which is equal to 331. In the fifth period, again 133 plus 10%, which is 13, 641. So, it is a positive trend and it is increasing at a uniform rate. So, this is called positive linear trend. What is non-linear trend? Now, assume the same scenario, the demand of the product is still increasing. So, it is a positive trend, but instead of 10% in the second period, it may go up by 20%. Third period, it will go up by 15%. So, all these figures will change. Again the next period, it may increase by 25%. In the fifth period, it may go by 12%. These are all hypothetical. So, 10, 20, 15, 25, 12. It is increasing every period, it is increasing. It is increasing on the previous demand. So, it is a positive trend, but it is non-linear. What do you mean linear? Line, straight line. So, there is no linearity, it is non-linear. Here I have shown positive, the same thing can happen when the trend is negative. That means, when the demand goes down, down. So, it is 10%, it may be 9%, it may be 7%, 4%, it may go down and down and down. Okay. And let us go back to the slide. Last one was seasonality. Seasonality is, of course, when you observe the change in demand, when there is a change in the a particular season, when a particular product is a seasonal product. Any product, think of for woolen clothes, they are meant for winter. Think of umbrellas, probably the sale of umbrellas go up during monsoon. So, these are seasonal products. So, there are plenty of seasonal products that we can give examples of. So, the observations will also change. So, let us go on to the next slide. So, these are some of the components for an observation. Before we go to exponential smoothing, we said we are going to discuss time series a little bit in detail. So, let us go back to the time series approach. In time series, we said we are going to discuss 4 models, out of which few of you may have already have got fair knowledge about, but still let us take period Again, as I said, the period can be month or year. So, period 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. For simplicity's sake, let us just take 6 periods, 6 years or 6 months, and we will take observation, that means demand. We will take hypothetical figures. Now, suppose in period 1, and we will take figures in such a way that it is easier for us to calculate. Suppose the demand was 100 units, 120 units, 135 units, the fourth period 140 units, 145, 150. Now, what is my objective? What is my goal? What do I want to do? I want to now predict. I now want to predict my demand for the 7th period, which I do not know, because right now I am in the 6th period. I know it is 150. How do I do it? So, there are 4 ways of doing it. One is applying cumulative mean, one is applying simple moving average, and one is doing weighted moving average or the exponential smoothing. When you say cumulative mean, you simply add all the observations and divide by the number of observations. That means 100 plus 120 plus 135 plus 140 plus 145 plus 150 divided by how many observations we have? 6. So, the total 100 plus 120 plus 135, whatever it comes to, whatever total it comes to, you add all of them and divide by 6. Okay. Now, there are companies who feel that in order to predict my demand for the 7th period, why should I go back to period number 1? I do not need to. Why should I go back to period number 2? Not required. For me, what is important are the recent observations. That means, what my demand would be for the 7th period will depend upon my observation on the 6th, 5th and the 4th period. I will not consider this period. I will only consider the recent 3 periods. So, what they will do? They will apply simple moving average. That means, they will only take these 3 observations. They will add 140 plus 145 plus 150 and divide it by 3. If they decide to take 4 periods, so they will take 135 plus 140 plus 145 plus 150 divided by 4. So, it depends upon what is the period of moving average they would like to take. Now, there is another observation or another school of thought where they say, okay, I am ready to take the last 3 observations, but in this last 3 observations also, this is more important for me, the latest observation, followed by, so my observation in the 6th period is most important. Then what is more important is the observation in the 5th period, and what is more important is 140, that is the 4th period. So, I will give weightage. I will simply not add all of them. I will definitely add all of them, but giving more weightage to 6th observation, a lesser weightage to 5th observation and a lesser weightage to 4th observation. And how I do it? Since I have taken 3 period, I will do 3 into 150 plus 2 into 145 plus 1 into 140 divided by how many periods I have taken? 1, 2, 3. If you apply cumulative mean, moving average and weighted moving average, you will find that weighted moving average gives a better result, because logically your forecast for the immediate future should definitely depend upon your recent observations. And even on recent observation, the latest observation is even more important. Okay. So, these are the in the time series. So, we have discussed. I am deliberately going a little slow, because since there is a model involved, there are some statistics involved. So, I hope you have understood. Cumulative mean, add all observations, all of them, and divide it by the number of observation. If you are not satisfied, if you do not want to take old data, you only want to concentrate or consider recent data, then it depends upon how recent, 1 month, 2 month, 3 month, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, whatever it is. If you decide to consider only the 3 period in simple moving average, you simply add up observations in this 3 period, divided it by the number of periods that you have considered. In this case, it is 3. Go one step further, when we are discussing about weighted moving average, then you give more weightage to 150. Since it is the last one, you have taken 3 period moving average, 3. If you decide to take 4 period moving average, then you take 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd. Then you start multiplying 150 by 4, 145 by 3, 140 by 2 and 135 by 1 divided by 4. So, this is weighted moving average. Now, we go to exponential smoothing. Now, if you see very interestingly, in time series we have not considered something, and what is that we have not considered, and which is very, very important, we make predictions, right? Predictions are made based on data, historical data. But does always prediction happen the way we predict or the way we forecast? No. There is always an element of error. So, I can see my demand today, fair enough. I can see what is my demand in the current period. But did I see what I forecasted in the previous period? That means period 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, I can see my demand say 145, but I would have predicted in period 5 what would be my demand in 6. So, did I predict 145? Did I predict 140 or 150 or 200 or 80? I do not know. Is there a deviation? Similarly, in the 5th period, I know when I am in the 5th period, I know my demand is 150. Now, have I taken into consideration when did I make a prediction for 5th period in the 4th period? So, I am doing a prediction a period before. When do I make a prediction? I do a prediction for the future. When do I do a forecasting? I do a forecasting for the future. So, I have done a forecasting for 2nd period in period 1. I did a forecasting for 3rd period in period 2. So, in time series model, in cumulative mean, simple moving average or weighted moving average, we have simply taken the observed demand. That is it. We have not tried to recognize whether those demand were as per the prediction done in the previous period, whether there was an error in forecasting or not. In exponential smoothing, we are going to add this component of error. Okay. So, let us go back to okay. Let us see this slide now. What is exponential smoothing? Exponential smoothing illustrates how historical data are used, for preparation for their ongoing use in forecasting future demand. How historical data are used? You simply do not use the historical data, but how do you use it? In exponential smoothing, there are three components or three parts. One is simple exponential smoothing, one is exponential smoothing with trend, and exponential smoothing with trend and seasonality. Simple exponential smoothing, where we do not take into consider any trend or any seasonal observation, seasonal variation, and simple. And when we talk of exponential smoothing with trend, we take the trend component into consideration, and exponential smoothing with trend and seasonality. But you should remember only that there are three types, that is simple exponential smoothing, exponential smoothing with trend, and exponential smoothing with seasonality and trend. But we are only going to discuss in detail simple exponential smoothing, not the other two. We are not going to derive, we are not going to get into detail on the other two, that is with trend and seasonality, because that will not be a part of this particular curriculum. It will be too extended. So, what we are going to discuss over here is simple exponential smoothing. Obviously, such derivation, such models will not be a part of your assessment, but we are not only doing this particular course for assessment, we are doing it for your concept also, for your knowledge also. So, as I said, when the assessment will happen at the end of the session, end of April or beginning of May, whenever this course ends, there may be questions, MCQ questions, which may be taken from such models. There can be multiple choice, they can be fill in the blanks, they can be true or false based on whatever we have discussed. Obviously, there will not be any subjective or theoretical or lengthy questions, one word, as I said, true, false, fill in the blanks, etc. But still you need to follow these models, and we are not discussing all the models, we will only discuss, even when forecasting and when we do other chapters in the next week, there also will be models, economic order quantity, economic production quantity, etc., etc. And we are only going to discuss the simplest of the model, and your assessment MCQ paper will be based on small questions on these models and other areas that we have discussed. Okay. So, let us make some assumptions. Those of you who are carrying notebooks, you probably can write down or probably wait when you get the study materials. Let xt be observed demand in period T. Okay. Current demand, today is the period T. Let AT, okay, one moment. We will not go by these let us come back over here. Let AT, let us come back to the board, be the predicted demand for next period let A t minus 1 be the prediction or forecast made in period t minus 1. That means, if t is the current period, then the forecast that was made in the previous period for the current period. There is an element called alpha, which is called smoothing constant, which depends upon demand data, and alpha is greater than 0 and less than 1. So, x t is the observed demand, whatever demand I am observing now today, the demand is visible to me. A t is the demand I am predicting for the next period. Okay. A t minus 1 is the forecast that I made in the previous period for the current period. Okay. And alpha is the smoothing constant. So, I leave this for a while in case people or any of you are willing to make a note of it. X t observed demand in period t, A t predicted demand for next period, A t minus 1 demand made in my previous period for current period, alpha is the smoothing constant. So, what do I need to do? Now, I need to, what is important for me here is A t. What is A t? Is my forecast or predictions for the next period. This is what I want to do, right? When I say prediction, it is forecasting. I have to forecast or I have to predict my demand for the subsequent or the next period. If you want to write this formula, A t is equal to alpha into x t plus 1 minus alpha into A t minus 1. It may look a little complicated at this point of time, but I will soon tell you what I am trying to arrive at. Okay? What I am trying to arrive at. Now, break this up. Alpha x t plus A t minus 1 plus minus alpha A t minus 1, that is I have broken the bracket. I repeat, A t is equal to alpha x t plus 1 minus alpha into A t minus 1. That means, my prediction or forecast for next period is a multiplication between alpha smoothing constant into my current demand plus 1 minus alpha into the prediction or the forecast I made in the previous year or month, previous period for the current period. I break this off, alpha x t remains alpha x t A t minus 1 minus alpha A t minus 1. Now, take alpha as the common. Alpha as common. X t minus A t minus 1, okay, plus A t minus 1. Now, what is this? This is today's demand, and this is what I had predicted earlier for today. If there is a deviation, if there is a difference, that means I have a, this is the error factor. I told you that this is the error factor which was ignored in other time series model, cumulative mean, moving average and weighted moving average. Here we are taking into account the error factor. I will leave this for a while, and because you will have sufficient time from today, because our next class will be on 9th, that is Monday. We have 2 classes on 9th and 10th, rather each of the day we have 2 sessions, 1 hour each, as usual 1:45 to 2:45 and 3 to 4. And from today onwards, when you start getting the study materials, try to understand what this is all about. Any difficulty, you come back to me on mail. In fact, when we go to the next class on 9th, I will definitely do a bit of a recap. I do not want to go any further because this is something which needs to be understood by you. Thank you very much. I will again see you on 9th, that is Monday, and I think within that time you will be able to make use of the link that I had shared with you for the internship platform. The fresh link, the new link that I have mentioned over here, I have already mailed that link also to all our representatives at different districts and locations. You can take, ask for their help, and from today or tomorrow onwards, you can start downloading the study materials, okay, and start reading them, and read whatever that has been discussed in this particular session, in the class, in the lectures. Don't try to read or don't try to learn anything more than that, right. So, I see you again on next Monday. I wish you a very happy weekend from Saturday and Sunday. Thank you very much. See you on Monday.